podcast number 48. My name is Mallory, otherwise known as Just a Dose of Love, all around the internet. So you can find me on Instagram, Reddit, Facebook, and Ravelry under Just a Dose of Love, though I am most active on Instagram. I am recording on January 23rd. It is about 12:30 p.m. in Edmonton, where I live with my favorite feline, Sissy Gasanya, Chris, and a snake named Heidi. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back to this video podcast. I'm so glad that you decided to come and spend some time with me this afternoon. If you're a new viewer, welcome. This is a video podcast that I really try to film bi-weekly. I've not been doing very good at that for a little bit now, but it is a video podcast where I talk about knitting and crafts and whatever else I happen to be making at the time. So now that that is all out of the way, I'm going to jump right into what I'm currently working on and what's on my needles. So I really debated whether or not I would be putting this into the podcast, seeing as it's not on the needles yet, but I am gonna talk about it a little bit today. So I am going to be using this gorgeous yarn here, which is, sorry, I got ahead of myself, apparently. Oops. Oh goodness, what is going on here? Anyways, this is the Dreamcatcher colorway. It was dyed by the lady over at What's Up Yarn Co. Unfortunately, she does not dye yarn any longer at this point, so unfortunately there are no more of these to be found. This is on what was her Stout worsted base, and unfortunately the label did not actually have the yarn composition on it, but if I had to guess, I would say it's probably an 80-20 superwash merino and nylon blend, or maybe a 75-25, because that's pretty standard for what was her worsted. It is super soft, super squishy, and I just loved the yarn that she would dye. Her talent is just crazy. You can see here all of these like beautiful teals, dark purples, little bits of brown, all of the blue, of course, tying everything together. This has been one of my favorite skeins of yarn for a long time now, and it was actually chosen by my friend Dylan for me to make something for him. So I'm going to be making a hat. It is going to be the same hat pattern as the last hat that I was making in my last podcast. Unfortunately, I do not have, I don't have it here to show you because I sent it over to a friend of mine who lives in the States as a late Christmas present. However, once I finish up this, and when I have it in progress, of course, I'll be able to show you what it looks like. I will be calling it the Alec hat, and this will be the third one that I will be making, so I figured that it would probably be best just to turn it into an actual pattern, and then I'll remember how to make it for the future, because my second variation of the hat, the one that I had sent to my friend in the States, I know the crown was done differently than the first one because it didn't quite have the same perfect semicircle shape on the top. So I'm gonna have to refigure out how I did that the first time. And this is why you should write your stuff down. If you plan on making more than one of anything, write it down, because my memory, not very good. So write things down. Anyways, there we go. That is what this is going to be. And I'm very excited to show you what it's going to look like, because the pattern itself, it is very squishy and lofty, and I think it's just going to go absolutely spectacular with this yarn. Second thing that's on my needles, I have been working on a set of socks, and I'm putting these together in an afterthought everything sort of configuration. So if you've seen the two tutorials that I have up, they show you how to actually separate a sock tube for doing afterthought everything socks. And the second tutorial actually will walk you through how to cut in the heel for afterthought everything socks if you are not a person who uses waste yarn for your cut spot. I am not one of those people. I will just cut my heels in and go from there. But for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I should probably actually just show you. So give me a second. I am one of those people who does the big no-no, and I roll my socks up as I'm knitting them. And I know that can lead to a little bit of like uneven stretching, but for ease and ergonomics of my wrists and holding up my socks, I do actually roll them up. So that's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm not super concerned. But here is my sock tube so far. This is being knit up on a yarn that I cannot pronounce, so I'm going to try my very best and definitely butcher it. It's the Shaft yarn brand. It is the Wanderlust colorway, also known as 9851, and it is a 75-25 superwash wool and polyamide blend, and it's self-striping. Isn't that cool? So this is all the way that it's just naturally knit up. It's got these cute little yellow stripes, very small yellow stripes. It's got some variation with the purples and then the pink stripes, and this teal as well. So I really like how it's knitting up. I thought it was going to be a little bit more pink, and I'm glad that it's not. But this is what the yarn ball looks like. It comes in 100-gram balls, and I definitely thought it was going to be more pink, but this is good. So I have just been knitting, straight knitting this entire sock so far, minus the cuff, of course. And I do think it's probably about time to make the cuff on this side and split them up, because, well, I mean, these are actually still going to be relatively short socks, I guess. So if I cut the heel in here, yeah, I think they can be a little bit longer yet. Oh, actually, this would be so perfect though right here, because they would match. I guess I will have to keep going until, what? Not there. Here? There? That can be my halfway point? Those are quite long though. Let's see. Let's say our heel is here. Oh, that's not too bad actually. You know, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna keep knitting until I get to the next teal stripe, and that is where I will make my cuff, and then I can separate my sock tube. Yeah, that'll be good. And of course, I'm knitting them up on my little 2.5 millimeter, what are these? Actually, I have no idea what needles these are. Chiago? They might be Chiagos. Little, yeah, 2.5 mil, 8-inch round Chiagos. And I didn't write them in my notes, so unfortunately I cannot do the conversion from 2.5 millimeter to the US size, and I can't do the conversion from 8-inch to centimeter in my head either. Kind of Canadian am I? Inches over centimeters, it's ridiculous. Yeah, so that's what what I have on my needles right now. Now, I was thinking about showing you my, oh, I've got something in my eye, I'm so sorry. I was thinking about showing you my peperomia sweater again, although I haven't done anything on it since the last time that I showed you, and at that point I hadn't done anything on it since the time before. So now it's been 4 or 5 months since I've worked on it, so I'm just gonna set it aside for now, and when it finally is reintroduced into my knitting, my current knitting, then I will bring it back. But until then, I'm just going to keep it to the side. And I will take a really quick little drink break here because my throat's getting a little sore. I'm not drinking anything fancy today, just some peach juice in my little skull cup from the dollar store. Love this thing. I really do love straws on most of my cups. Can't really tell you why. I guess probably because I spill them less. I accidentally knock them off things less, and anyways, I'm blabbing. So now, off my needles, I do actually have two things to show you, and I'm very excited about that. So the first thing is a pair of socks. Let's get the cat hair off of them. Oh no, what is this? Anyways, a pair of socks. It was knit up with the, they were knit up with the Drops yarn on their Fable print base. It is color number 542, and it's a 2575 polyamide and superwash wool blend. And just like the other socks that I'm currently working on, self-striping, but these are so cool because it's like self-striping but also self-patterning. Very cool. Oh, I had no idea how it was going to knit up when I had bought it, and I'm very pleasantly surprised. I think these socks are just so cool. Look at them. And even though these aren't the same, I think that the variation is just awesome. Yeah. So here is a very long set of socks. They are almost a full 50 grams each, so they're going to be super long. And hopefully that's okay for the person that I'll be sending them to. But you know what, even if they are a little long, I think you can just like bunch them up or roll them over. That should be just fine. I did make them quite wide. I'm just gonna leave them here for now. Normally my socks I will knit anywhere between a 60 stitch circumference and a 68 stitch circumference on the bigger side. For myself, I'm usually either a 60 stitch circumference or a 64 stitch, depending on how many cables there are. So if there's more cables, I'll go to a 64 inch stitch circumference. If there's no cables and maybe some eyelets or lace or anything like that, then I'll actually go down to a 60 stitch, because I find that the lace opens up the sock so much more, and cables of course make everything a little bit tighter. And these socks, I went with a full 72 stitch circumference, so they're bigger than even what I will normally make on the bigger end, because I had made my grandpa a pair of socks a couple Christmases ago, and while they fit perfectly lengthwise, his foot was a lot wider than I had actually accounted for, so the socks didn't fit him at all, and they ended up going to my mom. So I really want to make sure that these are going to fit, because I have their foot traced on a piece of paper, but I don't actually know how wide the foot is. So I tried to account for that. Yeah, so fingers crossed. I think all will be well. And it leaves some extra give if you'd like to roll socks up. I'm not particularly one for rolling socks, but I do tend to bunch my socks if they're too long. But yeah, so there, I have technically two finished objects, one finished project, and this pair is actually going to be sent out with this pair, so I'm going to wait until this one is done before I send them out together, because they'll be going to the same place. All right. And I have one other finished project I'm very excited to show you. It was my very first brioche project. So let me show you what I mean by that if you don't know. So this is a hat. It was the fern cap, or it is the fern cap by Courtney Spainhauer. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and I actually used some of my leftover yarn from other hat projects to make this. It is Brioche. And what Brioche is you see how normally when you do color work, it looks a lot like this. Okay, so there's no difference in the stitches, it's just a different color. And the Peperomia sweater is a really good example of this, so I am actually gonna grab it. Darn. Okay, so the Peperomia sweater pattern is a really good example of this, and I can actually show you because this is two different kinds of yarn, but you can see that when you switch colors, it doesn't change the stitch texture at all. It's exactly the same, it's all knit stitch. The back looks like this, so you've got your floats, but the front, it's all the same. Now with Brioche, I don't technically know what the difference is, but it's a completely different way of switching colors. So every normal stitch that you have has an accompanying yarn over stitch. And at the risk of getting too complex, you just knit those two together every time you're knitting and you make a yarn over, and that's what gives it such a lofty, squishy texture to it. So you can see where all of these single colors are, there's like a valley where the contrasting color is, and the back looks exactly the opposite. So the back on the Peperomia sweater, you have all those floats. On this, you don't. And it's a completely different way of knitting two colors. You don't have to do two colors with Brioche. I'm sorry, I have a hair on my face again. Cat hair, man, they get everywhere. Anyways, I'm rambling, but I really wanted to learn how to brioche knit. So I have officially finished my first brioche pattern, and I really, really love it. Yeah, so here it is. I'm actually gonna put it on because I can. Yeah, so there it is. Love it. It is so squishy. I probably could have gone with a smaller needle size because I know I knit a little bit loose as it is, and the brioche is quite loose as well, so it's not a very thick insulated, I don't know, there's a lot of space in between my stitches so it's not going to be super warm, but it will be a very nice light spring/autumn hat, and that's very exciting. And I finally get to cross this off of my list for things I want to learn. Brioche. And I see a lot of brioche in my future because this is a lot of fun. Okay, so that is it for, no it's not. I have something else to show you. Oh my goodness. It's been a very long time since I have talked about the coziest memory blanket. I was actually looking up past notes to see if I could find the information on where the pattern was. So this is the coziest memory blanket pattern by Kemper Way, and I will include a link below if you'd like to take a look at it. It is a free pattern on Ravelry, and I love it because I get to use my leftover yarns while I'm making these squares, and that's kind of why it's called a memory blanket, because you have all these memories of your previous patterns knitted into it. And the last time that I had done anything on this, I think, was back in podcast number 30. I don't know what year that was, but it's been a long time. And every year I set myself a goal to to work on my coziest memory blanket, and I did very little last year. But this year I have another goal to make up 26 squares on my coziest memory blanket, because that basically is one every 2 weeks. Now, this is what it looks like so far. Please ignore all my ends. I am weaving them in kind of as I go, so you can see no ends there. It's just on my edges, but here it is. So I really wanted to go rainbow with my blanket. So I started with my reds, my yellows, greens, going into blues, and then purples, and that's where it is. And I've done 1, 2, 3 squares so far this year. So that's what I've done. They do take me about an hour a square. So it's good for, you know, just whatever knitting. Knitting when I don't really want to get into anything too complex. It is very, very easy. There's not even any purling involved. So there it is. Speaking of goals, I did want to go through my goals list for 2022. So if you've been around for a little while, you may know that I'm big on goals and plans. I don't really like the word resolutions, but I do like to set yearly goals for myself. Pardon me, I'm just rolling up my blanket in case you're wondering what the heck I'm doing. But I do like to set yearly goals for myself. Professionally, personally, I have art goals, arts and craft goals. I have just a bunch of different kinds of goals, so I want to go through those with you. And last year I had intended to do kind of a touch base halfway through the year and at the end of the year, and I didn't end up doing that, so I'm going to try and do that again this year, and we'll see how it goes. So one of my coworkers inspired me to start a bullet journal. And I think bullet journals are just the coolest. I love the idea of doodling and journaling combined. So I was inspired to start one of my own. Now I picked this up at the dollar store. I wrote myself this beautiful first page. So 2022, we can't all do great things, but we can all do little things in a great way. And then when I started actually writing my goals, I was looking for this frickin' page and realized that I had not only written it in the back of the book, but I also wrote it upside down. So that is still technically my first page, but now my real first page is just my goals. So you can see I've got house goals, I've got fun goals, I've got arts and crafts and personal development, and I am going to run through some of these. So house, for a while I wanted to remake or just change the curtains on the big windows. That's an easy goal. I think I can hit that. Having said that, it's been on my goals list for the last 2 years and nothing has happened. That's fine. Repainting and redecorating my bedroom. I'd really like to do that this year. I want to finish officially decorating my craft room, so it's like 80% done, but that last 20% is going to take some real focus and determination, so we'll see if that gets done. Last year I had a goal to repaint all of the windowsills and trim outside on the house, and I did most of them. So this year's follow-up goal is just to finish any that I missed, and painting the exposed wood on my garage. Fun goals, I'd like to read 10 books, hit level 60 in New World, which is a game, hit level 60 in WoW, which is also a game, computer games that I like to play, take a Vancouver trip, which would correlate really well with Knit City in Vancouver if that happens again this year, so fingers crossed. I would really like to make that trip this year. Can 10 different things. I am really trying to get into canning. I have canned, well, I guess it's not really canning, but I've done pickled carrots. I have canned cranberries to make cranberry juice. I've been canning my apple butter, which is kind of a byproduct naturally of apple cider. And yeah, so I wanted to can 10 different new things. And you may or may not know, but one of my main hobbies, yeah, I did mention it in my last podcast, is climbing, where I injured myself in the fall, and now I'm mostly better. So I really like to consistently climb the level 4 routes and 5.11 plus, which is another grading system. I really hate their grading system. It's very confusing, but I would like to climb that level for the top ropes, which is something that I do with my sister, and that's when you're actually harnessed in and you have someone holding the rope at the bottom, so if you fall, then they're the ones catching you, as opposed to bouldering where you don't actually get high enough that you need a harness, which is part of the reason why I fell and hurt myself, probably. Anyways, arts and craft goals: learn to spin with my drop spindle, knitting 3 sweaters, looming 3 projects, knitting 26 coziest memory blanket squares, so 3 in, I'm ahead of schedule, publishing 12 patterns, making 1 pair of colorwork mittens, sewing 1 sweater, which is actually the one thing that I have done already this year. Sewing 1 sweater. I've actually sewn 2, kind of. The first one didn't make it to completion because it was much too small, and the second one is still slightly too short, but it works. I can still wear this. I have turned it into a bit of a cropped sweater, specifically for climbing and or hiking, and I think that's going to be great. 1 pair of thrummed mittens, finishing the couch covers that I've been sewing in the living room and in my craft room here, and finally organizing my double pointed needles and my circular needles. I really need to find an organizational system for this because I hate looking for my stupid double pointed needles and not knowing where to find them. Personal development: reading 2 nonfiction books, journaling 3 to 5 times a week, a monthly goal planning and assessment, learning about and making 1 herbal infusion per month, pulling 3 to 5 tarot cards per week and documenting them, doing 50 chin-ups a week, doable, a little more than I can chew currently, writing 5 gratitudes a week, and being able to do 10 chin-ups in a row by the end of the year. All super doable, just a lot of them. What I've also done is I've made this little book page, so once books are finished, I will write it in the title, as well as the day that I started, finished, and what I would rate it out of 5. My canning and sweater page. So you can see that I've already done my canning for January, which makes sense since it is the 23rd of the month. And I canned lemons, sweet lemons. There's actually very little involved in canning lemons. So if you'd like to try canning something, it is literally lemons and sugar. So it's very easy. Knitting my coziest memory blanket squares, and I get to fill in another one of these squares in the date. Looming 3 projects. I've left a little extra space in case I'm extra ambitious. I've done that with a few things actually. Knitting 2 sweaters, publishing 12 patterns. You can see again here I've left space to publish up to 14. Social media. Oh, one thing that's not on my actual written goals list, but I want to film 20 podcasts and 3 tutorials. So once those are done, I will fill in the little squares here, and it's kind of like a progress chart. My gratitudes. I've left several pages for that because I do anticipate that I'll be writing them often. And then I actually have it broken down on a monthly page. So I've got, this is my chin-ups. Every time I do 5, I fill in one of these little diagonals. My tarot cards and my daily goals. So I've broken each day into six pieces, and once I do that daily thing, I will fill it in. My canned lemons again, and my noteworthy items. Now, my January goals, I am behind on some of my January goals. Yeah, I am a little behind. There's reasons for that. I actually did get pretty sick kind of at the beginning of January, and I've just been dealing with like post-sickness fatigue ever since. So while I had plans to have my pattern fully written up and started by the 9th of January, you can see here that I have changed that to the 17th and starting on the 18th, and the 18th was actually the day that I wound my yarn into a ball, so maybe that counts technically. Probably not though. And I had planned to finish it by today, so that's definitely not gonna happen. And then I've also got my climbing progress here, so at the end of the month I will write down what my average was for these different kinds of climbing. What else do I have? I've just got movies that we watch and my rating out of 5. I've got TV shows that we've watched, and my rating for how rewatchable I think it is. And that's it. Then I start into February. So I've gotten my calendar started, but I'm gonna have to assess once I do my February assessment which things I really want to focus on and make sure I get them done. And hopefully we can touch base in June, at the end of June, maybe beginning of July, to see where we're at. And that's about it. So I am going to cut it here before I start rambling too much again. I hope you enjoyed this time that we spent together as much as I did, and I hope you are warm and safe and happy and healthy and cozy and doing all of the things that you love doing. If you also set goals, maybe you want to share them, feel free. I love to hear about other people's goals and the way that they track them, because I'm always looking for new creative ways to do that myself, to maybe keep myself a little more on track and focused on these kinds of things. But with all of that out of the way, I will see you again soon, and in the meantime, stay safe and happy and healthy, and I will talk to you then.